As the new CEO of KenGen, what are some of the priority plans that you actually have in store? And also this interview comes at a very timely point, whereby it's the beginning of the year. It would be a good time to also get the strategies that KenGen has for the year. What are some of the plans that also the company has besides your priorities?
My first priority right now is to deliver the 280 megawatts geothermal project, which we started about 2 years ago. It is in two phases. One is Okaria 1, Unit 4 and 5, 2 by 70 megawatts. The other one, the phase 2, is in Okaria 4, which is another 2 by 70 megawatts. That project, we expect to start commissioning the first 70 megawatt unit this month. And that unit should be on the grid sometimes in March, doing the testing on and off, but fully generating in the month of April this year.
So in total, what is the additional capacity that we can expect by the end of the year? And also perhaps you can also give us a hint in terms of the other additional projects that are in the pipeline.
This year we expect to bring in a total of about 340 megawatts, most of that coming from geothermal and about 20 megawatts coming from wind. On the other hand, in order to be ready to bring in the 700 megawatts within the 3 years, we are actively drilling wells at Okaria. We have got 8 drilling rigs, 5 contractor rigs and 3 KenGen rigs to get steam for Okaria 5 project, which will be 140 megawatts, and Okaria 6 project, which will be another 140 megawatts. And both those projects will give another 280 megawatts. And the plan is to have those projects in by December 2016. We are also working with government in preparation for the coal plant as well as the liquefied natural gas plant in Lamu. Although KenGen is not the implementing agency for that project. The government is doing it, but we have our technical teams working with the government and the other stakeholders in the preparation of the bidding documents for that project.
So when you say the LNG project lies with the government, does that mean that there's no monetary implication on KenGen?
That project is being done as a public-private partnership, which means it's being given to private developers to develop it. So you come in as IPP. So KenGen has no financial obligations on that project, yes.
Now, talking of government's plans to reduce the cost of electricity, and I think they're pegging that at up to 40% by the end of the year. How does KenGen, which is the major producer of power in Kenya, how does it play the role of helping to reduce the cost of energy at a time where we've already seen Kenya Power increasing the cost of electricity as of last year, December?
When you increase the capacity from non-fuel sources, such as geothermal, what it means then is that if the country would be asking for less generation from the thermal plant, the diesel plants such as Kepevu, Thika, Iberafrica. So as we bring in the plants, the geothermal plants that I've mentioned, it will mean we'll be generating more from geothermal, which we say it runs 24 hours, base load plant. And with that reduction in generation from the thermal sources will then mean that component you see on your electricity bill will actually be reduced. So that is the strategy.
Albert, of course, in terms of these projects, they're capital-intensive projects. And I do recall at the close of last year, we had an interview with the acting CEO then of KenGen, and he did mention that the company would require about 30 billion shillings for these projects. Now, in terms of the vehicles that are required for raising these funds, what do you see coming first in terms of the equity or the debt?
We already have a financial advisor stroke arranger, and we are drawing up a program which will lead towards being able to raise that money by June this year. And that is why during the AGM, we went to the shareholders and we asked for approval to increase our capital base so that we can then be able to raise some equity And initially, we want to be able to raise about 15 billion Kenya shillings. And what that will do is it will help us to contribute towards the project cost, and it will also open up our balance sheet so that we can borrow more money and still remain within the overall 70 to 30 capital structure.
Still sticking on that queue of capital raising, I've spoken to some analysts and they seem to think that KenGen is very highly geared at the moment. And you're talking of about 70% debt. Can your balance sheet handle that kind of amount of borrowing?
Now, the reason we are going to the securities is so that we can raise some equity. And when we raise equity, then it will open up our balance sheet to enable us be able to take in more debt. Because at the moment, you're quite right, we can't take more debt. We are actually almost there at the threshold. We are probably at about 65 to 35. So we can only borrow now about 5 to get to the 70. But by raising the equity level within the company from the shareholders, that will open up room so that we can get more debt without being overgeared.